I've got some sad news to talk about today, and I want to talk about Fan Ho, who was an amazing photographer who passed away a couple days ago on June 19th at the age of 84. Fan Ho was exceptional, and he had an enormous impact and a huge influence on my work as a lot of other photographers. And I did a video on him almost 2 years ago, and I want to talk a little bit about him today, and I have a story that I want to share with you that happened behind the scenes with Fan Ho. Fan Ho was born in Shanghai in 1931. And his family at a fairly early age moved to Hong Kong, where he grew up. And his legacy is probably best known for a body of work that he did in the 1950s and 1960s in Hong Kong. And it's significant for a number of reasons, not only because Hong Kong was experiencing a large amount of growth at that period of time, but also what was going on in Fan Ho's work stylistically. And if you take some of the amazing work that was being done in Europe at that time, and even parts of the United States, definitely New York, and you fused all that together but transposed it over an Asian landscape, that's kind of what you get with Fan Ho. He was a brilliant photographer, and I think some of that brilliance comes from that stylistic fusion of some of the things, especially compositionally, use of light, use of line and shape, that were going on in Europe at that time, but with that whole Asian flavor to it. And I think it made him a very special photographer and very progressive for that period of time as well. In the 1960s, Fan Ho went on to become a film director and did many films, and then later did a lot of experimentation with photo manipulations in the darkroom and did some very beautiful work with that as well. And I want to talk a little bit about him today, and I have a story that I want to share with you guys that you guys probably don't know that happened behind the scenes. So I guess about 2 years ago, I did a video on Fan Ho, and I did a pretty in-depth analysis of his work and talked about his output. And about 2 weeks after I did the video, I got an email one day from a gentleman named Danny who worked at Fan Ho's, the gallery that was representing Fan Ho, Modern Book in San Francisco. And he said, Fan Ho really liked that video that you did. And he wants to get a copy of it on DVD, and I thought that was really pretty cool. And so I said, well, what if we took this a step further? And I knew that he lived outside San Francisco, and I had just left my day job to do this show full time. And I said, what if I found a way to come to San Francisco, what if we did a video interview and we found a way to get Fan Ho on The Art of Photography? And they thought that was a great idea. Fan Ho agreed to it. And so we started talking about it. And you guys might remember just a little news item from those days. About 2 years ago, there was an Ebola outbreak that happened at a hospital here in Dallas. And it was an isolated case, but it was a big deal, and it did make, national headlines. And I got an email from Danny one day. He said, I'd have something to discuss, and we need to do this over the phone because it's a little bit sensitive. And I said, sure. So I called him, and I said, what's going on? He said, well, how close are you to the Ebola virus place? And you mean the hospital? And so anyway, so it was funny, but apparently there was a family member that was somewhat concerned. And I guess people don't realize that Dallas is a city with several million people in the Metroplex. But I can respect that. And I said, well, it's interesting because at the same time, I also had an offer to go to Massachusetts and do an interview with Harold Feinstein. And Harold was not in good health at that time. Harold had suffered a massive heart attack that year and was having some health issues. So it was kind of really under a time crunch to get that one done. So I said, well, I have an idea. Why don't we come back to this? And that could, help ease their mindset about, the Ebola breakout and all that. And I'll go do Harold's thing, and then we'll pick this back up in a couple months. And sadly, I never did. We had talked about it a few times, and it was interesting because, between Fan Ho and Harold Feinstein both, that was the two events that really started planting the seeds in my mind for doing the Artist Series. And I guess the irony is that even though Fan Ho really inspired a lot of the Artist Series, is that I was never able to get him on it. And I do kind of regret that in some ways. But I do want to say this about Fan Ho, and I think the same could be said of any legendary photographer or creative or somebody that we look up to and admire their work. And mortality is limited. We are all here for a finite amount of time, and we don't know when that will end. And so that's some of the impetus of why I want to do the Artist Series, is because I think it's important to preserve that legacy and have artists talking about their work. And so one of the ways I look at it, Fan Ho had a great life. He was 84 years old. Same with Harold Feinstein, same with Mary Ellen Mark. They had wonderfully successful careers. And, it's interesting because I think the way that I would define mortality is it's not so much and I don't want to get there too out there on you guys, but it's not so much something that's defined physically. You know, I've worked with people with both physical and mental handicaps that were capable of doing things that would make you cry and blow your mind all at one time. But our mortality is defined by two things. It's defined by how we treat other people and the work that we leave behind. And this is just my thoughts on this. And Phan Ho obviously had a very loving family, and he left behind an amazing body of work. And I don't necessarily mean that has to be photography. That could be something creative. It could be something you do as a vocation. It's just the body of work that you leave. You know, you can be the best accountant in the world and inspire somebody else, and that's important. And Phan Ho did that. And you look back at his legacy and what defines that. And I think that there's a lot to it. And I think that the best thing that we can do is just go enjoy that. And it's there for us, and it was left behind. The only regret, like I said, that I have is that I didn't get on it sooner. I waited too long. And something I can't undo, but I wanted to talk about that a little bit today because, you know, Phan Ho and Harold Feinstein really did inspire all the work that I'm doing now and why I think that that's important. And so they mean a lot to me, not only as photographers, but also for that. So it's about all I've got for today. I will link up to the video that I did a couple years ago if you guys want to see a more in-depth analysis of Phan Ho's work. You can go look at that and also go to his website. I will put that in the show description as well and go enjoy some of his work there. That's about all I got for today. Until the next video, I'll see you guys then. Later.